G'day viewers, my name is Michael and welcome to Single Racer. And what I'd like to do today is give you my force feedback settings in an updated video, or probably more accurately an alternate video for the settings I use for my Logitech Driving Force GT wheel, but this could also include the G27 or G29 Logitech wheels as well. And this is by using an external file called the Ultimate Custom Force Feedback File from Race Department. And a huge thank you to the channel SimRacing604 who put me initially onto this file, and I'll have a link to his video as well in the description. Now near the end of the video I'll be going over 5 bonus tips in regards to some settings and things like that, and actually show you how to install it as well. But for now, the Race Department website, or the author of that file, talks about 2 files, but he updated everything into 1 file now. So all you have to do is put that file into your Project Cars 2 directory, but I'll show you how to do that near the end of the video. So let's just go through some of the settings that I now use to get the closest possible feel to my favourite game, Assetto Corsa, and how they've become much similar using this file. But just before we do, there's one thing I'd like to cover, because when most creators upload videos that are an update to their previous settings of some sort of software, or a particular thing they're showing off, they usually put a link in their previous video to say, look, forget this one, go straight to the new updated one. But I won't be doing that, because a lot of people have messaged and commented under my previous videos saying how helpful that video is. And essentially what that video does is use the Jack Spade files that help them get those settings, and I was quite happy with those settings already. But this file to me is even better. So what I won't do is I won't go to that video and say, look, this is now redundant, because it's already helped so many people. In fact, what I'll do is I'll have 2 videos at the end, which is that older video, and a video before that, which was my original settings video. If you're a person that just doesn't want to bother with installing extra files, you just don't want to worry about that kind of headache, and just want a simple Logitech Driving Force GT setup video with the game as its default, as it comes with normally, and not worry about these external files and how to install this kind of stuff. So I'll have both of those videos at the end for either of those 2 types of people that want to know about how to install Jack Spade files, or want not to worry about files at all and just have the original Project Cars 2 settings. And so now we'll move on to how I set my particular force feedback settings. But the reason I bring the Jack Spade files up is the Jack Spade files were made well before probably direct drive wheels took over. And with direct drive wheels, they've got so much power, as most people who are familiar with those wheels know. So the author of this file incorporates direct drive wheels as well. So the settings are much lower. So if we go over here to force feedback, in my previous video I had, I'm pretty sure, both of these set to 50. Whereas these settings are now much lower, because the strength of the file and the force feedback together gives you enough road feel and great slip and everything like that to compensate for the previous Jack Spade settings. So these have changed quite a bit here. So this is what I'm using, and the gain is optional. I actually had the gain at 88, but it's a car by car basis. So if the car feels through the wheel very weak, you could up this and or lower it depending on the car choice and just what you feel like you prefer in game. If you want a really strong force feedback, or like I prefer a lighter one because I feel that the stronger one for my basic cheaper wheel, and you know, I love the Driving Force GT wheel, that's served me really well, but because it's a very weak wheel, the force feedback when put up to 100 tends to mask what the road feel is doing. And often that's a mistake people can make, is they have 100% force feedback and they go, oh, look how strong my wheel is when I turn it. But the trouble is that they mistaken that for strong force feedback, when in fact it's actually masking what the road and the wheels are telling you as they slide across the road. Can often get masked by having it too high. So just try that a bit lower, and if you don't like it, you know, you just put it up to 100 again. And so at this point, it's probably good to say that, you know, this is such a personal opinion. Everyone has a different opinion about what they like. And that's the great thing, is you can adapt this. This is just a guide. This is what I like. This is what gives me the most road feel and the closest. Again, the JXB files were excellent and very good. And they did come out in the beginnings of direct drive force feedback wheels, and I believe they were updated to include some extra files, but it was still the early stages of direct drive wheels, whereas this file is even more accurate, including my own very simple, very basic, very weak wheel, and it's improved it to another level. So keeping in mind that this is just personal taste, I want to go through these settings here, because there's a channel called Mystx24, so that's spelled MYSTX, and he was telling me he's an excellent driver in Project Cars 2, and he was telling me that the 50% throttle and brake settings represent a 1-to-1 setting. And I was saying, well, I have them set to 100. I'll give it a go and see. Now, if you have a look at this very simple graph here, that's just a basic line representation of 0 to 100%. Mystx24 is saying that the 50% is a 1-to-1. So as you reach the full 100% acceleration, that's the most accurate. But I don't know what it is about my wheel, or, you know, I've got very basic pedals. I don't even have a clutch. But I find on 100%, it's either a situation, because they're 8-bit pedals, that it could be, and I'm guessing here. And if anyone is an expert who truly understands the difference between 50% sensitivity to 100% and say 50% lower, what lower would give you, please just leave a comment. I'd be very interested to hear. But the feeling that it gives me by having it at 100 and not 50 is almost like as if there's 2 steps to when I slowly press the accelerator. So in a lot of the, you know, I like to drive classic old cars and they slip and slide, but I just feel for some reason, and it's the same in Assetto Corsa, I have it set to 100, because I just feel like almost as if there's, for every one step with 50% being 1-to-1, it's almost as though I've got 2 steps for every 1 step normally. And I know that probably doesn't make sense and probably isn't accurate. It's probably more like you reach 100 earlier. But in that case, when you're talking about classic sliding cars, it should actually make you drive worse, because you're instantly at 100, you spin your wheels and you slide all over the place. But it doesn't seem to translate that way, at least on my Logitech Driving Force GT. So for me, having it at 100 over 50%, which is the default Project Cars 2 setting, I feel is better, but it's just personal opinion, and you can test them out to your own, to what you like. But the one thing I have changed even more so, and this was a tip when Project Cars 2 was released, one of the advisors was Ben Collins. Yes, the actual Stig, Ben Collins. And there was a video where he suggested a setting of the speed sensitivity to 45. And his reasoning was based around the way I like to set up my wheel. Now, my wheel calibration setting on the second part of when you calibrate your wheel in Project Cars 2 is the setting of, I believe it's 1260, the number 1260, which is the reverse way of setting your wheel up to use a 240 wheel rotation. I don't use 900 wheel rotation because I like to drive similar to an F1 car, where the most I turn the wheel, and it's usually on a hairpin bend, is if you imagine your hands on a clock face at 12 and 6 o'clock, and that's the most I turn the wheel. So I like that kind of tight F1 or GT3, very minimal input to the wheel turning, you know, so you're just sliding the wheel a little bit and you get full rotation of the car. And his 45 setting, which he recommended people use, was excellent. But in my testing with this new file, I put it originally down to 40 and it was even better, and then I settled on 33. Now any lower and it gets ridiculous, where the car just turns too much and it's too hard to control. But 33 is my choice, but I just wanted to tell you that Ben Collins recommends for most users to set this to 45. So that, again, that's an optional setting. And so now that these are the settings based around my Logitech Driving Force GT wheel, and that gives me the best feeling in Project Cars 2 that I've ever had previously, now I'd just like to cover the installation and, in a sense, 5 bonus tips or some tips in regards to Project Cars 2 in general and force feedback. And so let's cover those off now and we'll conclude the video. And now the first tip, being taking screen grabs, comes about because I'm an anal pain in the butt where I just like to have control of everything. I'm a control freak. I like to tweak settings. I like to back up files to external hard drives, all that type of thing. But my suggestion is, what if you hated my settings and you go to change it back to your settings and you go, oh, I just can't remember what my settings were. I never, you know, wrote them down or just memorized them. Or if you have a crash and you go to start Project Cars 2 again and you go, oh, what were my settings? They were so good. So my tip is that here is the example where I've created, and this is just me, you don't have to do this, but I have created a separate Project Cars 2, and I've done the same here for Assetto Corsa, where not only do I save advice and tips and all things like that, so there's the Jack Spade files, and there's the ultimate custom force feedback settings. And so what you can do is you can back up your Project Cars 2 settings. Now this would include your force feedback, so if you ever wanted to reload it, you could just, if we come down here to the save games, under your Windows directories, save the Project Cars 2 directory. So this is separate to your Project Cars 2 install. This is the file that saves all those settings and everything, and you can back it up this way. But, you know, it could be a pain backing it all up from a hard drive. Whereas what you could do is you could come here and all you do is you press on your keyboard your print screen key, and then you come over to Windows, which has the default paint, comes with every version of Windows as far as I know, and you just go paste, and then you just simply choose where you want to back it up to and back up. So if we go back to Project Cars 2, you go to your force feedback thing, press print screen again, come back to paint, press paste, and there's each of your settings. So you have now not only your saved settings, but a picture version where you can instantly get, okay, these were my previous settings if you end up not liking mine and you want to go back to whatever yours were in the beginning. So that's a great tip if you're that type of person that likes to back up stuff and try and remember what your settings were. Now, the reason I wanted to cover that first, and sorry for the loud voices there, I was leaning forward and didn't realise that I was checking the file to make sure it recorded properly and didn't realise I was so close to the microphone. Sorry about that. But the reason I wanted to bring that up first was, if you don't like my settings, to have a way to remember what you previously had if you've never memorised them. But the advantage of this file, now when you go to the Erase Department site to download the file, the author refers to two files, or other people make comments about two files in the description, and I send him a message saying, why is there two files when there's only one file when you download it? And he just said it was simply an update where he's incorporated everything into the one file. But the advantage of that is, with his file and the Jack Spade files, they're all totally interchangeable. And the way that works is, if we come here now to my C drive directory, so this is where you can back up not only your force feedback, but all your settings. Probably includes the replays, you know, all stuff that Project Cars 2, all your like your personal best records, they're all saved under whatever your C drive is, your main drive, under users here, Michael in my case, which is my name, but it'll be your name, or, you know, whatever title you've given it, and under documents. And here it is here, Project Cars 2, and up the top here is Assetto Corsa, just the same. And Assetto Corsa saves all its settings and force feedback and all that in its own directory as well. But if we open this up now, this is all custom, and this is what I mean by my tweaking. So I have the file here, and I have a link to where I downloaded it from, just to remember, you know, in case there's an update. But the file in question, or one thing I'll cover off, just because they prompted me to trigger that, is that in order to get files to work, either Jack Spade files or this ultimate custom force feedback file, you have to change the flavor here to custom. And it's setting it to custom, which tells Project Cars 2 to read the file. If you don't have it set to custom, it won't read the file and will just play under the normal raw, you know, immersive, those things. So you have to change it to custom, and then it will read the file. But if we go back to the file here, here's all the Jack Spade files, and here's the ultimate custom force feedback file. But what you do is, so when you download it from Race Department, it's just simply the one simple text file. And what Project Cars reads is a file called FFB _custom _settings. That is the simple file that it reads. So all you do is you would rename this with a different extension. So I would rename it, I come from the old DOS days, I would use BAK, B-A-K, or, you know, just something to say, or even just put before the dot something like original, you know, just type something like that that changes it. So as soon as it's changed, it won't be read. And then you rename this one to FFB custom settings. And then it will read either this ultimate file, or if you don't like that, you can still have, as I have here, every single one of the Jack Spade files. There's the, and he did update it with the direct drive settings, so you can try that if you prefer that one. And like I said, I'll have the video to that, how I set up those settings with the Jack Spade files in a video at the end of this one. And all you would do is you could test. So you could test every one of the Jack Spade files, you know, that's medium, strong, weak, you know, just test them all simply by making sure that you rename the original file. And that's the keys. You want to back up this file by renaming it something like original or backup or just something like that, so you have always the original file there, and just rename any of these to exactly this here, FFB _ custom _ settings, or use the new ultimate custom force feedback file. And that way you can have, as I have here, saved them all. They'll always be there. And this is, remember, this is not where you install Project Cars 2, but it's saved, it's separate saved settings. So you can even back this up as I have done before. I'm not sure if I've still got it open. If I have, yeah. So here's my Project Cars 2 backup created directory by myself, and I have the saved games. So every so often, when I have a lot more replays or something, or I change the settings, I just delete this, press back on my keyboard, back to here, and copy, and then paste again. And I have a new backup of all the settings, all the force feedback and all that. So you can do it that way, or take the screen grabs, whichever suits you the best. So let's move on to tip number 3. And now I'll admit that tip number 3 is controversial, because that's why I mentioned that I'm a kind of a tweaker person. I like to change things up a little bit. And so that works also in my sim racing, meaning that I respect what everyone tells me as far as what how to improve. I'm always open to trying to improve, but I don't necessarily follow what everyone says. And I'll do my own testing and see what works for me best, because ultimately it's what works for you and not for me. So I'm giving you this advice, but only if it works for you. So the tip is a general sim racing tip that comes around here, and the word is dampening. And what most people tell you is, because if we come back here, so that's my Logitech Driving Force GT wheel, a very basic wheel. But in its software that you get with it, most people say to you, you should turn dampening and the other, I think it's a strength setting, but I'll show you, off. And the argument is, when you switch it off, you get the best road feel. But for me, it doesn't translate that way. So let me just show you what I'm talking about here. Here is my Logitech software that you get with the wheel. And if I come down to options here, there are the two settings that I'm talking about: spring strength and damper effect. So they're the two that people will always say to you, you should turn these off, because the general advice is that it makes the car handle better, or you feel the road better. But I'm just saying, the tip from me is that just simply test it for yourself. And the reason that I say that is because people are saying that it's better, but what I find interesting is, this is my software for my wheel, but if I hit defaults, it goes back to 100. And so I've left the testing in my mind open to say, well, hang on, just because it goes back to 100 doesn't mean it's better. But when I race in Project Cars 2, and in Assetto Corsa for that matter, it is better, or I feel it's better. And so I find it interesting that people are saying, oh yeah, just turn it down to 0 because that's the best setting. But I find it interesting that my own software tells me when I click on defaults that it sets to 100. Now this isn't always the case, because I do change the setting here to 240. This is the wheel rotation setting. And so I do change it. So I listen, and I am open to that advice. And I'm always open to anything someone says to me. But I'm just saying, for me personally, setting these two back to 100, their default settings, I feel is better So maybe you should just do a simple test, try it at 100, 50 and 0 and see what works for you. So let's go to tip 4 now. Okay, so tip number 4 is basically, being the tweaker that I am, I always used to get frustrated at this problem because I could never figure out what the reason was. And it was such a common problem in forums where people say, why is it doing this? I can't figure it out. And that's because, being a tweaker, I would do something like, so I'd be in a Seto course and I'd be testing a mod. And I'd have this, yes, it's very anal, but I would have like an Excel spreadsheet that gives the mod car a score, out of 10, and just some details about it. And so I would alt tab so easily in a Seto Corsa, but every time I tried to do it in VR in Project Cars 2, I would get this error, and I kind of avoided Project Cars 2 for one of the many reasons, but it just frustrated me until I finally figured it out. So let me try now and give you so I've got my VR headset on now, and I'm in the VR version of Project Cars 2, and I'll try and mimic this error. So let me just lift the headset and go to the windows as I normally would. And what would happen is, hopefully you can see the mouse, but if you can't, I'd be in a little square and I couldn't move the mouse. And, I'd be trying to move the mouse to the bottom of the screen and it'd be stuck in this tiny square. But I finally figured it out, that it never occurred to me that the reason is I've done many videos talking about, so a great example is what we call in Assetto Corsa the free roam camera. And when you press F7 using the free roam camera app, you can move your VR headset as though it's a separate camera to all the other typical trackside cameras that you get just normally with the game. And what I didn't realize was there was the error, because what I was doing was I was lifting my head. So if you think of your typical, your cool cat, and you've got your cool sunglasses and you lift your sunglasses up to your forehead. Well, I didn't realize that when I was alt tabbing that it becomes a camera. So I'm just hoping now you can see the mouse. But what I never actually tried, because I was just looking always straight ahead at the screen and trying to move the mouse with my right arm down to the bottom of the screen. But I never looked at the bottom of the screen. And then it dawned on me that the VR headset, because it's acting like a camera even out of the game, is forcing the mouse into its little view window. And in fact, if I moved now, which hopefully you'll see, is if I move my head and therefore the VR headset down, it's tracking where the mouse is. So theoretically, I could move my headset to the position that I wanted to click and then click, but that in itself is a pain. But what it never occurred to me is, if I just simply take the headset off and take it out of the way of the sensors, then the mouse suddenly becomes normal again, and I can do what I want to do, and then put the headset back on, and then simply I'll tab back into the game, and I go, oh, thank you, I finally solved this issue. And this is only if you're playing in the VR version, because interestingly, I tried to do it from the 2D version. So I put my headset on, but I was already in the 2D version of Project Cars 2 to do this video, and it wouldn't work. It's only, so the default only seems to come up when you've chosen the VR version, where the menu is floating in your VR headset in the screen, and then you alt tab. So that's a little fix that bugged the hell out of me. So hopefully if someone has that problem, all you do is you take your headset off out of the side of the sensors and your mouse returns to normal. So let's now finally wrap up with tip number 5. And so now, as a final way to wrap up this video, I'm calling the final tip basically a range recap. And all I mean by that is because What I'm saying to you is these are the settings now that I feel that I've got the absolute best and closest force feedback using this wheel that you see here, the Logitech Driving Force GT wheel, that's best for me. But that doesn't mean it's best for you, and you should pick what you like, assuming you want to try this file. So what I'm suggesting is, when you download the file and you put it in the directory, come over here and try a range. So maybe 5 to 10%, you know, like, so in other words, 35 to 45 up and 35 to 25 down. And try, you know, just a range of settings with each one and see how it changes. You know, pick your favorite car and track, and the car especially that you like to drive, and try a range. Same thing here is I prefer it set to 100, even though that MrX24 is saying that 50% is a true one-to-one. I just find with my pedals it seems to react better to the way I like it. But what I'm saying is just try a range. Try 50%, try 100, try 75. You know, just try each one. And especially, and probably the most important one, is this one here. Try 45, because that's what Ben Collins, the Stig, recommended. Try 50. Try my 33, try 100 or 0 and see what, because it's usually those maximum sort of changes, the aggressive changes that will tell you through your wheel what it's actually doing. So you only do the sort of 40 to 33 when you're fine tuning, but you need to maybe do the 50 to 100 to see what it's actually changing when you drive. And finally, if we come to here, and because I wanted to cover, it's something I forgot, but with these are all the Jack Spade settings, is try them all out. Download the Jack Spade files and the custom file and try each one, but just remember not to rename. If we just take one, so the one that I was using was the alternate mid. That was my previous best setting, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was. But the trick that I learnt from, and a channel by the name of Humble George backed that up, is the mistake you can make is rename that to the file that you need, which is FFB custom settings. What you want to do is you simply want to do this and go copy and then move it to here, say, just anywhere else, rename it, and then move it, you know, cut it, and then move it back again as the FFB custom settings. This way you never lose the original files. They'll always be there, because if you rename the file, you just automatically lose it if you don't like it, and you probably will never remember what it was originally called. So this way, if you just copy and rename and then paste it into the directory, you'll always have those files there. So I hope that helps. This is just the settings I like. I truly believe that I got it very, very closely to my favorite force feedback game, which is Assetto Corsa, and I'm very, very happy with these settings, especially these ones here. So this is Michael signing out for Single Racer. I hope that helped. I'll catch you next time. See you later.